Hey everyone, Doug at Real Simple Housing. Hey, I'm in here at Boulder at Graham Hubner's office at Colorado Lending Group, rocking the CU swag. Go CU, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm here with Graham. He and I have been longtime partners working together. Tons of experience. Myself, 30 years in the business. Graham's got 20. I'll let him share more about him and his story. So Graham, tell us more.
So Graham Hubner, I'm managing broker at Colorado Lending Group, and we also have a few other offices throughout the West, in Idaho, Utah. We also are California, and I'm missing one in there.
Utah.
Utah? Montana. We just got approved in Montana.
There we are.
So we are focused on residential real estate loans. Been doing this for a long time. Doug's been a partner of mine for the better part of probably 13, 14 years, something like that now.
Yeah.
We've been through a lot together. We've watched this industry go through the 2008-9 craziness and the last few years of COVID. So we've seen it all, and we've been through it all, and we are comrades in arms of getting people houses.
I talk to you often about how important it is to get an experienced agent and also a lender. And so Graham is on the top of my list when it comes to lenders. He's been spectacular in helping my clients, multiple clients over multiple years. So with that said, I'd love to touch on one of the things that comes up often is a discussion about, hey, listen, I need to get my grandma a co-signer. They call them non-occupying co-borrowers, right?
Yeah. So it happens quite often, and again, when people are just starting out buying a home, and they, are getting their first time in the job market, they've accumulated some debt, maybe student loans and things like that over time. It can help if we have a family member in it, and it must be through blood or marriage, a relative of that person somehow, to basically be a non-occupant co-borrower. And everybody says co-signing. Really, it's a non-occupant co-borrower is the way they look at it. They're not going to occupy that property, but they're going to be on the loan. And generally what that person is bringing to the table, it's not credit score, it's not assets, they're bringing income to the equation, right? Everything else could look great, but we don't have the income to get there. That person can step in and provide that extra income stream to help qualify that person. They are on the loan, so it's something that will show up on their credit. But if you are buying that home and you make the payments for 12 months, we don't consider that an obligation of that person any longer. I get that question quite often.
Yeah.
So once there's a 12-month payment history of the people buying the home and they want to go buy another house, we just show that that's, not their obligation, their daughter, their son, somebody is making those payments, and they actually just were a non-occupant co-borrower.
Right. So then that liability can be removed from their credit report.
Their world.
And that's really important because oftentimes we know that we have family members that are trying to help us get into our first home. They're spectacular about offering it. I mean, it's such a gracious move on their part. But knowing that there's an exit to them, that they're not necessarily totally tethered credit-wise themselves to it.
And that comes up a lot. They ask, how married to this am I? And in other little things, if you were to go apply for something else other than a mortgage, maybe they would consider that factor against somebody. But in housing, we do not.
Right.
So that is an important point. And that's really, everybody says co-signing, but co-signing is the same as a non-occupant co-borrower. And it is also important to let that person know that's doing this. They are applying for a loan. We do need all the same things that we need from the borrowers, right? I mean, they are as much a borrower as them. So they can't just simply say, I'm credit worthy and I'm going to help co-sign. We need all their stuff. So
you got to prove that you are.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, fair enough. So that's great to know. So make sure, I know it's a little bit of a process to get all those documents together. Sometimes they're financially advanced, rental properties, things like that. It will be a little bit of an effort on their part. It certainly is going to be well worth your time to help facilitate that and help you get in that house. I mean, at the end of the day, if that's what it takes to do, let's do it.
We do it. Yeah, we do it. And sometimes it might be a grandparent, right? And somebody's a little elderly. We've gone to people's houses, collected paper documents, made our scans of everything. So we try to not intrude too much on that person.
That's great.
And try to help them, if we can work with their financial planner, if we can work with their CPA, if we can work with their banker to get the information we need and they can just not deal with it, we try, honestly.
And that is so good to have. And keep that in mind. As you're looking and interviewing lenders, make sure they're willing to go the extra mile to help you out. I mean, that makes all the difference in the world. And a lot of times your closing rate is far superior than the majority of the people in the community of lending. Simply because you do that, right?
Yeah.
Like you know the borrowers.
We really try. I mean, it's not just another thing for us.
Right.
We get very intimately involved in this process, and our clients, a lot of my clients have been clients for the whole time I've been in this business.
It's not surprising,
and it means a lot. That's like the biggest reward you can get, right?
Yeah.
So
appreciate that. And one other item that comes up often is discussion about earnest money.
Mm-hmm.
I will go write the contract. We'll define how much earnest money they're putting down. And then once they put that money into escrow, then how do you treat it? How's that? Because oftentimes people think that that's maybe money that goes to the seller. You talk a little bit about how you view earnest money?
Yeah, and earnest money comes up a lot, especially if it's a competitive situation and a seller is asking for a substantial amount of earnest money. That's a little scary.
Sure it is.
Right? Earnest money is just that. It's good faith money that's put into the transaction that says that you're going to follow through with your contractual obligations. And if for some reason you can't, there's dates and deadlines that you would say, I can't move forward with this loan or this house, whatever it might be, you get that earnest money back.
Right.
The way we treat earnest money is it goes into the full transaction at the end of the day. In other words, if you have a house that you're buying for $300,000 and you have a $200,000 loan and you have $10,000 in earnest money, that $10,000 goes into the equation as part of the down payment. You'll have closing costs and prepaids above that. So let's just say you might have need to bring in $106,000. That 10 will just go to eat up that, where your remainder is 96. Does that make sense? So it's really just part of the big kitty of what is owed overall. Now, we talked a little bit about, trying to buy a home with little or no money down.
Yeah.
And you can do that.
Most of my buyers aren't coming with $100,000.
Right.
Like my entry level first time buyers, we know that we're pinching pennies just to get in, right?
So,
and we're trying to bring $1,000, right?
Yes.
Remember, $1,000 in.
So an example of this might be, you've been saving as best you can, and the earnest money requirement on this home is $2,000, let's say.
Yep.
You have it, but it's breaking the bank to put that down. But you're applying for a loan that's going to be 100% loan to value at this point in time, right?
Yep.
And so where does that earnest money go?
Yeah.
Well, now it stays at the title company and it just exists there until the end of the transaction. It's not the seller's money, right? It is the title company's holding that money for you. And as we get done with the loan, where it's 100% loan to value, and let's say you had a seller concession, we were talking about those, to pay for the closing costs and prepaids. So really you're paying nothing, right, at that point in time. I mean, not 100%. Even 1,000, 100%. That $2,000 goes back to you when we close.
That's great to hear.
So you get to have that money back.
Yeah. Oftentimes my buyers have those concerns that, where's that money go? Is it lost? Did I give it away? I know that's a great question. It's your hard-earned money. Make sure you understand where it's going. It's a great question to ask. Keep asking it throughout the transaction, but that is safe. It's in a neutral third party holding that in escrow. Right? So we call it escrow. It's held in escrow, and then it's either credited to the loan, and if you don't need it in the loan, you're getting a check back at closing. Good for you.
Yep. And it's my job and Doug's job to make sure that that earnest money stays protected. In other words, you do have to go through those dates and times where you have to let the listing agent and the seller know that, hey, I am fine with my inspection. Right? And I'm not going to get out of this contract based on my inspection. Right. And another one might be the appraisal, which is the value of that home. And the appraisal comes in and it looks good. Right. Okay, we've crossed that threshold. You're not getting your earnest money back for the appraisal. The final one usually hinges on me, which is loan conditions deadline, and that is really your last step. If we're done with the loan and you're completely approved, then you can't get out of that for that reason. But there's a date, and we try to usually hit the date.
Well, and then I develop the dates working in conjunction with Graham, the lender, in advance, right? So when we submit, we go do the showings on the homes, you find the home you love, we're writing that offer. There's dates involved on that, and you'll see that when that comes up, when you get ready to buy, you'll see the contract come across. There'll be specific dates and timelines that we want to adhere to. There are contingencies that they're for inspection and a number of things, and we've talked about that in previous videos, and we'll walk through that at the time that we're creating the contract and going through it. But I'm communicating in advance on that contract 100%. With you to make sure that the timelines are realistic, because not every buyer is set up that there may be something in getting and we've seen it, right? The employer takes a while to get verification of employment.
They're on vacation for 2 weeks. We can't even get a hold of them. They're in Europe. So we can extend those deadlines, and generally everybody's on, in a real estate transaction, everybody's on the same team. We're trying to get to the end goal for you and for that seller, and so those dates and times can shift, and sometimes appraisers are backed up for 2 weeks. Sometimes they go the next day, right? So we just have to. We
like it when it goes the next day. Believe me, that makes the deal go so smooth. So no, that's it, and that's a great point about all the earnest money and making sure it's secured. We go back and forth, and this is the communication we talk about all the time with experienced lenders, experienced agents, where the communication and dialogue, not only within the transaction, but back to you as the buyer, is so important, because then we're all on the same page. And generally speaking, my experience has been that as a buyer, as long as you are always trying to progress forward, they're not trying to keep your earnest money. That's not the goal of the transaction. It's just showing that you have good faith. So
that's right.
As long as you're going through, you may not be able to get approved at the end of the day. Life may happen. You may get laid off. But if that does happen, you have some recourses, and you should, if that's the case, and you can't qualify for the loan, and it truly is a terminated loan based on
circumstances that we didn't know existed.
Outside of your control, that you should get your earnest money back. It's obviously written in the contract. We got to review it, make sure we go through it. But most people are sympathetic to that.
100%. And there are times, and I've been doing this long enough, where things do come up in the loan process. Somebody didn't even really know. Great example. They're on title to another property in a different state. It's not really their house. They put the kids on that house. And now all of a sudden, that person's responsible for $12,000 a year in taxes in Massachusetts. Now they don't qualify. I mean, we have ways to maybe solve that, right? And try to get them off a title. But when that comes up, we didn't know that in advance. They didn't even know it. And now that's an obligation that we have to look at that may disqualify that person. So those things do come up. They happen. No one ever does it on purpose. When we usually say that you're good to go, you're good to go. But there are weird stuff. Somebody I know did get laid off during the process, right? I mean, it happens.
We've all experienced that. So.
And that earnest money will not be kept by the seller. If we have hit all those dates and times along the way, it would be very rare to have anything happen in that short period.
And during that transaction, you and I are going back and forth. We know what the dates are.
That's right.
As we start getting close to that date, we have a conversation of, hey, where are we at in the approval process? Are we having any hangups? Should we be concerned? And if they are, then I'm writing an amendment to the contract to try and either extend the date, and if the seller's not willing to work with us, hey, we're terminating.
Right.
That's it. We're going to protect you.
And a lot of times, I reach out to the listing agent too, just to make them feel comfortable with the process that's happening in the background. They don't need to know anybody's personal information, but it's nice to know that I'm touching base and letting them know, hey, we're done with this, or we're here in the process. They feel good. They know that somebody's paying attention, moving forward, not
and this brings up a great point. As a buyer, you want to make sure you have a lender that's going to advocate for your benefit, right? And that's what an experienced lender does. And to you, it's invaluable to have somebody that's doing that. So if you have an agent like myself advocating for you, as well as the lender, it's a very powerful team.
Yeah.
And the success rate is off the charts, right?
can be.
I bet you it's 3-4 times the success of closing when you have that team working together than if you don't.
I would agree. I've seen some pretty unprofessional, very new people in the industry stuff that lands on my desk and says,
then you're
help,
carrying
right,
it,
help,
right?
help,
Like,
yes.
Yeah, so at least there's one advocate in the transaction trying to help
Yep.
go through it.
So pick up the pieces wherever they got dropped.
Yeah, yeah.
And it does happen. And that's why I think being prepared, understanding the process, having somebody take you through this path to home ownership and understanding those important points is so important for the buyer. At
I
the
agree.
End of the day.
Yeah, that's the sign. So,
Yep.
any case, I want to thank you, Graham, for your time.
Hey, thanks, Doug.
It was great.
Yes,
Love being
my
up here
pleasure.
in Boulder and
Yeah.
supporting CU.
Watch Doug's daughter play soccer for CU next year. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And then in the description below, there's a link to Graham's page, contact page. Definitely reach out to him. Get started on your path to home ownership. That's really the most important and first step. Let's get you started with Graham. Find out whether it's a month, 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is. We're going to walk with you lockstep through the whole process. We're going to make it as seamless as possible and get you started on it. And then you can always reach out to me to get started as well. Down in the description below, hit that link and let's get you started on home ownership. So thanks again, Graham.
Yeah, thank you.
Look forward to doing
Appreciate
more
it, Doug.
deals.
Yep.